There's a real irony in the fact that the Conservative Party is putting down a motion calling for the control of public expenditure and calling for trust to be returned just 3 years after a notorious mini-budget, which saw the biggest set of unfunded spending commitments in recent memory. The mini-budget continues to damage the market's confidence in UK fiscal credibility. We still pay the so-called moron premium, driving up interest expenses on government borrowing, now running at £131 billion a year. This has huge impact on everybody individually. So paychecks go less far, tax bills are higher, small luxuries like having a slice of cake or having a pint or taking your family to the pub, those are increasingly out of reach for many, many people, and that hurts. Again. So today we have called on the government to respond to the crisis in our hospitality sector through an emergency VAT cut. This would boost footfall on our high streets, protecting jobs in a sector which employs people from all walks of life, young, old, those returning to work, those vulnerable, part-time workers and everyone in between. And we're proposing bringing down household energy costs as winter coming by removing the biggest levy baked into people's electricity bills, in effect putting more than £90 a year into the pockets of the average family. This will be closer to £250 for some of the least well-off who rely more on electricity for their heating. This is about supporting local businesses at the heart of our communities, which we all represent, and making a real difference in people's lives by making it cheaper for them to heat their homes. For too long, our high street and the small business owners on them have been crippled by the policies of successive governments. All this needs to be paid for and needs to be done in a way that is pro-growth, pro-business and shields households from even greater bills each month. This isn't an easy circle to square. I'm not going to pretend it is. We as Liberal Democrats are seeking to bring deliverable and progressive ideas to the table, ideas which, if the Chancellor chose, she could deliver in her budget, which is just days away. And the impact would be felt by households across the country with almost immediate effect. Firstly, we're calling for a time-limited tax on big commercial banks levied on the massive windfall profits they are receiving due to unintended consequences of our financial system. Because of high interest rates and the way the quantitative tightening programme works, the Treasury is effectively handing over billions of pounds to the big banks every year via the Bank of England, effectively subsidising banking profits at the expense of the taxpayer. Digital services tax is another thing that we should be looking at to raise revenues. So we would raise that digital services tax from 2% to 10%. And that would raise roughly £4 billion a year, and that plus get some of the biggest and wealthiest corporations in the world to finally contribute their fair share of tax here in the UK. We would also increase gambling taxes, because that is an important thing which really beggars some of the most vulnerable in society. And, of course, the biggest one of all is rejoin the customs union with the EU. We left a market, and nobody voted to leave the customs union, and we are now in a market which is more than 7 times smaller than what we used to be in. And as somebody who founded and ran a business for 24 years, it hurts. It has huge damage, and that's small businesses, medium-sized businesses and big business, and we're living with that loss. So the quickest way we could do is by negotiating a new bespoke customs union with the EU, and this would unleash the potential of British business. We need to significantly strengthen the scrutiny powers this chamber has when it comes to the government's financial management. The practice of the Chancellor keeping the budget secret until the day, at which point everyone else has to scramble to assess the detail and has no time to provide a proper, meaningful critique, is far from the best way to scrutinise the government's economic policy and is not how many of our international peers go about their economic policy. Proper, detailed scrutiny of the budget, as opposed to the wave-through regime we currently have with no proper transparency before approval, needs to be addressed. Just because we have always done things a certain way, it doesn't mean there isn't room for fresh thinking, a more collaborative approach and greater ambition. Realistically, if we are going to repair the economic damage of the last few years, we need fresh thinking and new ideas. Thank you.